So the much anticipated Tuesday Trump arrest did not happen, and I honestly think Trump is disappointed it didn't. Republicans have been circling the wagons around him for the last several days, and for good reason, because it's utter BS he could be indicted and arrested for this drummed up charge of allegedly paying off a porn star to keep quiet about an affair. And you don't have to like Trump to see what a miscarriage of justice and waste of resources this whole pursuit has been. They've had this man under a microscope for years, and this is the hill they want to die on. You know, it's a tough one to sell to the American public. Well, minus these two very passionate Trump haters the media bent over backwards to showcase. You know, it's super pathetic, but the media doesn't care. They love the fact they get to talk about Trump again, because look at the alternative they have to work with.
First, I'm proud to use my authority under the Antiquities Act to establish the, and I want you to know it's a big deal, the Havaniqua May. I'm having trouble. Thank you. I got it. I just know it as Spirit Mountain.
I don't know what Spirit Mountain is, but Joe Brandon over there ain't really selling it to me with that pitch. You know, I'd rather go to Splash Mountain, but they've already canceled that attraction for being racist, so there goes that. But point is, Joe's a damn mess and a half, and covering him only makes that more apparent. So of course the media would rather have some juicy Trump headlines to chase. They want to see him handcuffed because it's good for ratings, and honestly, I think Trump wants to be handcuffed because it's good for poll numbers. And I get it. It's the perfect showcase of our messed up and weaponized justice system. But let me just say this. The demand for Ron DeSantis to address it and then the outrage over him addressing it is baloney. Sorry, that's going to offend some of you, but you're tough. You can take it.
The Manhattan District Attorney is a Soros-funded prosecutor. And so he, like other Soros-funded prosecutors, they weaponize their office to impose a political agenda on society at the expense of the rule of law and public safety. He has downgraded over 50% of the felonies to misdemeanors. He says he doesn't want to even have jail time for the vast, vast majority of crimes. And what we've seen in Manhattan is we've seen the crime rate go up, and we've seen citizens become less safe. If you have a prosecutor who is ignoring crimes happening every single day in his jurisdiction, and he chooses to go back many, many years ago to try to use something about porn star hush money payments, you know, that's an example of pursuing a political agenda.
Am I missing something? Because DeSantis denounced the witch hunt, denounced DA Bragg, and said he will not cooperate with or aid Bragg in his indictment. So what frickin' more do you want from the guy? I'm a Trump supporter, but my God, this is insanity. Ron DeSantis is not obligated to kiss the ground Trump walks on, and neither am I, and neither are you. This pile on DeSantis this week was ludicrous, and I don't care what you call me for pointing that out. I'm not going to sit back and play to the hits when I, clear as day, think it's BS, and I support Trump. This political persecution against him is utter nonsense, but to think the sitting governor of Florida, who hasn't even announced his candidacy yet, needs to bend over backward to ingratiate Trump, who goes after him almost every single day now, is BS, and I won't jump on that bandwagon. Sorry, no. But furthermore, let's get this straight. The corrupt Manhattan DA weaponizes his office against Trump, and y'all point your cannons at DeSantis? I really don't understand the strategy here, but this ain't it. Joining me now with his take, which may very well be the exact opposite of mine, and that's okay, is attorney and former Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Kash Patel. Kash, it's great to have you.
Hey, thanks so much for having me back on the show.
So I want to talk about the merits of this arrest and the indictment and all the latest news, but I have to jump to what I just said there, because I know you probably have maybe a different perspective. I know you're very close to the Trump camp, but I got to tell you this. I support Donald Trump, but I also don't understand why DeSantis has been made the enemy this week. I don't think that that's strategically helpful for Republicans, nor do I think it makes a ton of sense, but I want to know your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's actually a great point you bring up. I'm not the politically savvy guy in the Trump domain, but my thoughts on it are he is probably trying to highlight who's likely going to be his biggest competition. And if you could preemptively take him out, and you've seen, whether right or wrong, the media had exploded on Ron DeSantis for not talking earlier. And that narrative seems to be carrying the day. That's sort of the messaging that only Trump can craft and sort of navigate that landscape. Whether it works, like you said, we'll see a lot of people, I'm sure, are siding with your logical position, which is valid on all fronts. And so I just think the political ramifications of it might be different. Will Ron DeSantis, like you said, he hasn't announced yet. Will his calculation be different? I don't know. He just did that big Piers Morgan interview, which all but said he was going to run. So I guess the competition is on.
No, it certainly is. And I get it because strategically for Trump, I guess it makes sense. I mean, he's trying to intimidate Ron DeSantis right out of the gate before Ron is even out of the gate. So I get it. And he has done a masterful job of making the Trump supporters turn on Ron DeSantis, label him establishment. I get the strategy on Trump's part, but do I think it's good for the party? No, I do not. And to aim the cannons at your own party when you don't even have that man as a competitor yet, to me is frustrating. Also, let's take into account Trump goes on Truth Social and says, I'm going to be arrested on Tuesday, right? So we have really nothing other than Trump saying he's going to be arrested to go on. We know that there's a grand jury. We know all of this. But then because he goes on Truth Social and says, I'm going to be arrested, then everybody's supposed to just immediately like come out of the woodwork and say, like, we love Trump. Like, yes, I understand it. But for DeSantis to have to call an emergency press conference on Sunday and say, I know that Trump said he might be arrested. Let me defend him right now. I mean, I think that that's the expectation that some Trump supporters have, and I find it nonsensical. But I want to go back to just the actual situation at hand here. So the latest that we have, and this is constantly evolving, is the grand jury was supposed to meet today. They've postponed the hearings. There's apparently a shakeup in the Manhattan DA's office for good reason. I'm sure a lot of people are really frustrated with the turn this is taking. But what do you think that says about how this is all going to evolve over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, from my position, I'll speak to as a former federal public defender and a national security prosecutor. I did state and federal grand juries and try cases like this all the time. What it shows to me is that they are having problems with the evidence. You don't just cancel a grand jury, especially one of this high profile in nature. And I highlight the witness Costello. So for me, it comes down to what's the evidence? You have a convicted federal felon in Michael Cohen, who went to prison for 3 years for the crimes of lying, fraud, and deception. And then you have Costello, who is basically one of the best attorneys in the New York City era of the last 20 years, who doesn't have a criminal record, who was called before the grand jury and provided contradictory testimony and evidentiary paperwork. And I didn't even know this, and I'm following this stuff pretty closely. He went and talked to the national security prosecutors at DOJ 2.5 years ago and submitted 8 inches worth of emails from Michael Cohen himself. And this state grand jury that Alvin Bragg is convening failed to show the grand jury this set of emails and documentation supporting his testimony. To me, that's a shocking suppression of evidence. And that's why I think you're seeing the turn of events here with the grand jury.
Yeah, there was some discussion about how Bragg had really cherry-picked the documents and the evidence that he wanted to use against Trump, but that's not surprising to any of us. I think we all know that this is a politically motivated vendetta. You've got Alvin Bragg downgrading felonies to misdemeanors, but now he's going to upgrade a misdemeanor to a felony. We know the reason. It's because it's to go after Trump, and it's a big win for liberals if you can do anything to damage Trump. But on the other side of the coin, I think this is the best thing that's happened to Trump since they raided Mar-a-Lago, and I think that if you asked him, he would honestly probably tell you the same thing. I think for him, this reignites the fire behind his campaign. It allows him an opportunity to demand loyalty from every Republican that walks planet Earth. So I think Trump wants to be arrested. You know more than me, though. What do you think he's thinking right now? From a political standpoint, he's thinking, how do I make this as advantageous for me as possible? I talked to him either last night or the night before, I can't remember. I don't think he wants to be arrested, but maybe gets as close to it as possible and then doesn't get arrested is the ideal scenario, of course. And for him, what I think he's doing, or what I've advised him on, is we need to use this as an example of the two-tier system of justice that's been created, not just at DOJ anymore, but at Soros-backed prosecutors across the country. Because if you wind back the clock to Russiagate or Jan6 or Ukraine impeachment 1, 2, or what have you, Mar-a-Lago, Biden classified documents, people have said, oh, it's a conspiracy theory to have a two-tier system of justice. But people are really focused on this case. And if we can show a disparate treatment based on political orientation and on facts and evidence, I think that's the win for so many Americans to say, wow, this is a plague and we need to defeat it. And then what Donald Trump is riding on is defeating that two-tier system of justice. Oh, and I agree. And I am wholeheartedly in that camp. I understand it. I think strategically it's wise. I also think it's very important for him to be leading the charge on this because he is really the most covered man on the face of the earth. So for him to be in the spotlight for this reason shines a light on it that maybe otherwise would be dimmed in other situations and other scenarios. I mean, you've got, pro-life pastors being handcuffed or having their homes raided at 7 a.m. in front of their families, also showing a two-tiered system of justice. But those cases don't get the coverage, of course, that Donald Trump's has. So I think that that's incredibly smart for him to highlight it. I'm 100% behind him. I think most Republicans are. I think even most just fair-minded independents are as well. I think it just remains to be seen how this is going to affect everything and if we're going to get the solution that we all want out of it, but also perception for a lot of people is reality. So for me, I never really think about the people that are hardcore Trump supporters or news watchers or independent thinking folks. I think about the majority of Americans who still believe in Russiagate and still believe that Trump is a criminal way back from 2017, right? So I'm wondering what impact this is going to have on their perception of the justice system and of Donald Trump. Do you think it moves the needle?
I do. I think this is one of those rare instances in history where it's no longer just Russiagate. It's no longer just Jan 6. It's no longer just Ukraine impeachment or whatever fiasco you want to pick. It's now front and center, not just for the political universe, but literally all Americans everywhere I go, and I'm sure the same for you, are talking about this. They're dialed in at least somewhat more than they would normally be. So if you can showcase this scenario for what I believe it is, which is the politicization of justice and the weaponization based on political targeting, just like the other examples you highlighted, then I think, and that for me, that's the advice I was giving President Trump. That's the win. If you can connect real America to this butchering of the justice system, then a lot of those people, I truly believe, will start saying, okay, maybe we got the Russiagate wrong because we were watching CNN and reading the New York Times. That's the hopeful win. The media is as big of a corrupt actor in this scenario as Alvin Bragg is, or as the DOJ are. In my opinion, they can't exist without each other. And if we can correct the record on some of the media and also show Americans that this two-tier system of justice does exist while crime in my hometown of New York City is exploding, then I think we have hardcore facts that they can't run away from anymore. And they're going to be like, okay, I want to say for America, who's going to bring it for me?
Right. Well, you're right. So let's point the cannons at the activist DAs and at the mainstream media, probably not at our fellow Republicans, because it really doesn't make any sense at this point. But I want to talk about another story that conveniently has now been hidden because Trump really trumps everything, right? But last week we were getting a lot more information about the Biden family business dealings, all right? So we have it in plain black and white that they're receiving money. Then you've got Haley Biden, a guidance counselor, also receiving money. And then the attorneys for Hunter are saying he's a private citizen. He can make money off of whomever he wants. It's not involving national security. It's not involving the big guy. But how deep do you think this runs? And do you think with this investigation, there is finally going to be accountability and maybe even for the big guy himself?
So the accountability won't come from this Department of Justice or FBI. We know that they're run by government gangsters that Biden put in place and or Trump holdovers that hated Trump to begin with. But the accountability, I relate it back to my time running the Russiagate investigation. You can have constitutional oversight of Congress that leads to accountability. And I think Comer, Chairman Comer of the Oversight Committee and Chairman Jordan are doing a wonderful job subpoenaing the documents that matter. And what I've always said is money doesn't lie. It's how we cracked the code that Hillary Clinton paid for the whole Russiagate hoax, right? The bank documents never lie. Comer went out and got them. And I understand why he's keeping the documents himself private right now, because he's got to subpoena witnesses and get people to testify under oath. Then you release the bank documents. And the trail of money goes from, if we're to believe James Comer and Company, and we have no reason not to, CCP-affiliated companies and banks directly to the Biden family. I mean, it goes to Hunter. It goes to Joe Biden's brother. It goes to Haley Biden and who knows who else. And so once you show America those documents, that's it. It's game over. And now there won't be a charge on it, but there could be congressional consequences to it. And I think the biggest way we can help is by educating Americans to say, read the documents for yourselves. Don't bother listening to me or what my opinion is on it. Money doesn't lie. And just look at it this way. What if $1 million from the CCP went to Don Jr. and Eric and Laura? The conversation would be totally different. They're not saying they didn't get the money. They know they got caught. Now they're just saying, oh, we had a right to it. Well,
Yeah.
do you? That's the next question.
Yeah. So I think also, I don't know how people can still reasonably say that Biden is not implicated in this, because we have information that says people were saying, don't say anything about Joe over any writing. Make sure you only say it in person. We've got an understanding. I mean, you got Bob Alinsky saying that Biden is definitely in this. Joe himself is in this. So this is a real national security threat. And again, the fact that these payments span so many years, I've been saying it all week, but that's what troubles me the most, is because if you just get one payment because they think that you can affect policy and they think that they can get access, that's one thing. But when they keep paying you, you're doing something for them to keep paying you. And it's not because crackhead Hunter is painting them a portrait that they just want to keep getting more of. There's got to be something there. There's got to be something that they gave to these foreign entities to keep the payments coming. And that's what we really need to know.
And that's what the purpose of constitutional oversight of Congress is. They can get the documents and they don't have to hide behind that farce that DOJ and FBI always does and says, we have an ongoing investigation. We can't tell or show you anything. Congress doesn't have to do that. We released the Nunes memo and things like that during Russiagate, and Comer and Jordan have the ability to do the exact same thing. I've been calling for them publicly and privately through their staff to investigate the money lines on this, because it's the easiest form of evidence to produce. And once they have that, then put everybody under oath. Hunter Biden isn't above a congressional subpoena. Neither is Joe Biden's brother or Haley Biden or anyone else. And let's haul in the CCP affiliates who paid these people the money and have them testify, whether it's behind closed door or open door, I don't care. Put them under oath and let America know it happened, and then let them read the transcript. And they can make up their own mind. To me, that was the best form of accountability we gave during the Russiagate investigation, because we said, you don't have to believe us. Read their own documentation. And that's what I hope we get to with Comer and Jordan in a few short weeks here. And I think it'll answer a lot of the questions you're talking about. And the timeline, you're right, no one's really touching on that. It is expansive. It's not like a week. It's like 10 years. And that, just think about that. Is our commander-in-chief and his family jeopardized by our number one adversary in the world, the Chinese Communist Party? It's a valid question now.
Well, and I also want to know, given this recent news with Russia and China seemingly teaming up here, how close do you think we are to a World War III? And how excited do you think that not only rhinos that love the military-industrial complex, but also Democrats are about the possibility of this happening?
Yeah, look, as a former chief of staff at DOD, I'll always say that's the best job I ever had, leading our armed forces as a civilian. And the tragic reality of that is we prepare for war, prepare, and hope we never have to go. And that decision comes down to our leadership. And right now, our leadership is invested in the Ukraine to the tune of $110 billion. And it's too cute by half to say Americans aren't on the ground there. American contractors are on the ground there. That means people who used to be in the American military are now out there doing the machinery, the training, the manning, the equipping for the Ukrainian soldiers, because they don't know how to run tanks and operate surface-to-air defense missile systems. But the other problem that I think is inching us, unfortunately, closer to this war is the military-industrial complex in the United States of America. And I've always said, they are worse than any political action group and any lobbying arm in Washington, D.C. They operate on a full-scale budget that is endless. And I'm not saying everything they do is a waste. They do a lot of amazing things. But I've literally seen $10 billion blow up in the sky and have no one responsible for it, and then they get another contract. So I know why a lot of these Republicans are calling for it, but here's the reality that Americans need to realize. You can only send so much money without sending conventional soldiers. It happened to us in Afghanistan, and we got locked in for 20 years. And I think we're heading there. In about a year, you'll see conventional soldiers on the ground in the Ukraine. And I think that is the most tragic scenario we could have. And China and Russia, they're linking up to egg us on and to get us involved in this war because they know it's bad for us and good for them.
Here's what frustrates me to no end, by the way. China and Russia are both concerns for us geopolitically. We know this, especially China, right? So them teaming up is a real big national security threat and a global threat. But we're not going to send our son and daughters to go to war to fight for flipping Ukraine. I'm sorry. I'll say it. I don't think the American people are going to get behind that, but then a lot of the American people are still wearing those flippin' Ukraine flags on their lapels, so nothing surprises me anymore. But where have we seen this movie before? I don't know. We send our troops over to train the forces of another country where it was a good day if they didn't shoot themselves in the foot using our equipment and our resources, and you still put Americans in the zone of fire. You tell them that they have rules of engagement that are really stiff, so they really can't do much except for basically defend themselves. But we do this, we fight other people's wars, and, you know, people on both sides love it. So I don't know how this plays for an election. That's the thing about Donald Trump. I know that he would never stand for this. I don't think a Ron DeSantis would either. But you've got others like Nikki Haley that are cheerleading this. Surprise, surprise. And I think the American people better watch this. I've also seen several polls come out that say that Americans are behind this endless funding of Ukraine. And I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe any of these polls. I think the way that they ask the questions is probably a little shady and tricky, because I just don't think the average American believes in sending more resources or, God forbid, troops on the ground there.
I couldn't agree with you more. I go across this country and talk to people throughout the communities like you do. No one wants to go to war. Not just sending our sons and daughters. No one wants to go to war because of the cost of war monetarily. How about we redirect, say, the $110 billion we sent to the Ukraine? What if we took $5 billion and put it on the border? What if we had one more Chinese fentanyl drug bust and saved one more child from an overdose in America, an American child? What if we did that to safeguard our communities? I think that's what Americans want. And they're saying after we do that and there's leftover money, sure, let's help other people. But I think that's Donald Trump's core message about America first. We can't get into conflicts overseas. We can't be goaded by China and Russia. And we haven't even endeavored to talk about what China's going to do to Taiwan. And that's a whole nother scenario that's going to play out during the Biden administration. So I just think, and I agree with President Trump wholeheartedly, that we have too many problems, too much crime, and too much corruption in America right now. And committing our blood and treasure to another 2 decades overseas is just a brutal reality with the direction of this commander in chief. And for those of you who haven't, talk to a veteran about it, that's my best advice. Go talk to someone who served overseas and fought in a theater of war for our country and ask them. I did. Helped Trump end Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Somalia. And you know what I did? I flew 65,000 miles in 3 months, and I asked our men and women on the ground, should we leave this country? It's your decision, not ours. Every single one of them said yes. Even the people who were in Afghanistan on their 8th tour of duty said, we do not need to be here. That, to me, speaks more than any politician ever will about the state of the American defense apparatus.
No, you're right. The people on the ground are the ones that know it best. Again, it's amazing to me that we have convinced liberals to be pro-war, but, whatever the big D says, the big D gets. Cash, thank you so much for being here. All eyes are on a possible Trump arrest should it happen, and we appreciate all of your insight.
Thanks so much for having me back on the show. It's great to be with you.